Hey everyone! Welcome to Anime Octopus. If you love anime fanfics, theories, and what-if scenarios, you're in the right place. Today, we've got an exciting story for you. What if the White Fang had chosen Naruko? Before we dive in, just a quick disclaimer, this channel is all about entertainment and discussion. I don't own any of the anime footage used, full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Alright, let's jump in and explore this alternate timeline. A small child, no older than 3, dashed through the dimly lit streets of the Hidden Leaf village. Her bright blonde hair, streaked with dust, clung to her face as she ran, her wide blue eyes filled with fear. 3 distinct whisker-like marks adorned each of her cheeks, and her worn-out white shirt and slightly tight black shorts only added to her disheveled appearance. This was Naruko Uzumaki, a young resident of the Hidden Leaf village, one of the most powerful shinobi settlements in the elemental nations. She was desperately trying to escape from a group of villagers whose harsh voices echoed behind her. "Get back here! Stop running!" Panicked, Naruko turned into a narrow alley, hoping to find a way out. Instead, she came face to face with a dead end, a cold, unyielding stone wall. She spun around, pressing herself against it as her small body trembled. Tears welled up in her eyes as she curled into a corner, hugging her knees tightly. "Please! Don't hurt me!" she whimpered, her voice barely above a whisper. Just then, a figure appeared in front of the gathered villagers. Dressed in black shinobi attire, the masked individual bore the distinct armor of the Anbu, an elite force tasked with protecting the village. The tiger-patterned mask concealed their face, but their presence alone caused the villagers to hesitate. "What is happening here?" the Anbu asked, their voice firm and commanding. The villagers took a step back, uncertain of how to respond. They feared punishment, knowing they had acted out of line. However, before Naruko could feel any sense of relief, something unexpected happened. The Anbu turned toward her, their expression hidden but their movements decisive. The masked figure knelt before Naruko, gripping her small shoulders. "You mustn't cause trouble, young one," they murmured, their tone oddly unreadable. Naruko flinched at the unexpected contact but barely had time to process the words before another presence arrived. 3 shinobi appeared in a blur of motion. The first was a young man, no older than 13, his dark attire matching that of the Anbu, though his mask bore the design of a weasel. He stood protectively in front of Naruko, his katana drawn. This was Itachi Uchiha, the prodigy of the Uchiha clan and a newly appointed Anbu captain. Beside him stood 2 women, their expressions stern yet concerned. One had striking crimson eyes and long black hair, draped elegantly over her shoulders. She wore a unique sleeveless kimono over a mesh undershirt, and her presence alone carried an air of wisdom. This was Kurenai Yuhi, a highly skilled genjutsu specialist. The other woman had vibrant purple hair tied in a high ponytail. She wore a tan trench coat over a mesh bodysuit, her sharp eyes scanning the scene with intensity. Anko Mitarashi, known for her fearless nature, looked at Naruko with a rare gentleness in her expression. "Is she all right?" Itachi asked, his voice steady but filled with concern. Naruko's gaze flickered between the 3 newcomers before exhaustion overcame her. Her small body went limp as unconsciousness took hold. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately," Anko said urgently, already using basic medical jutsu to stabilize her injuries. Kurenai joined her, working quickly to ease some of Naruko's pain, though the more serious wounds required professional treatment. Itachi acted swiftly, creating 4 shadow clones to carefully reset Naruko's dislocated limbs. The moment they were realigned, Naruko stirred, a silent cry escaping her lips before she slipped back into unconsciousness. "You are incredibly fortunate that I won't report this to the Hokage," Itachi stated, his voice carrying an unmistakable edge. His gaze then shifted toward the Anbu operative standing nearby. "As for you, Tiger, you are hereby dismissed from your duties. Your mask is to be turned in by morning." His words were firm, leaving no room for argument. The villagers looked relieved that the situation would not immediately reach the Hokage's ears. However, their relief was short-lived. "I never said Kurenai-san and Anko-san couldn't report this," Itachi added, his expression unreadable beneath the mask. The weight of his words settled over the gathered villagers as the three shinobi vanished in a swirl of smoke, taking Naruko with them. The next day, Naruko slowly opened her eyes, staring at a white ceiling. It took her a moment to realize she was in the hospital, and judging by the warm afternoon light filtering through the window, it was already late in the day. Just then, an upside-down face appeared in her view, a young teen with long black hair tied in a ponytail. He was grinning from ear to ear, his eyes closed in a cheerful expression that reminded Naruko of her own playful smile. "Well, looks like our sleepyhead is finally awake," the teen said with a bright, amused tone. Naruko gazed at him curiously, her nose twitching slightly. Suddenly, she let out a small sneeze, and as she did, her illusion dropped, revealing two fluffy blonde fox ears atop her head and a large, silvery tail resting behind her. The teen's onyx-colored eyes gleamed with intrigue. "Well, that's interesting," he mused, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. "I'd say it makes you look even more adorable." At first, Naruko tensed, uncertainty flickering in her bright blue eyes. But when she noticed no sign of mockery in his expression, she relaxed a little. She opened her mouth to ask a question, only to realize that no sound came out. "The doctor said your vocal cords were severely damaged," the teen explained gently. "Even with your impressive healing ability, it could take years for your voice to return. Restoring delicate nerve and muscle tissue takes time." Naruko's expression wavered for a moment before she forced a small smile, revealing slightly pronounced canines, just a bit larger than the rest of her teeth. Her thoughts were abruptly interrupted by the loud growl of her stomach, making her cheeks flush with embarrassment. "Hungry, huh?" the teen asked with a chuckle. "How about some of that Ichiraku ramen I hear you love so much?" At the mention of ramen, Naruko's face lit up with excitement, and her fluffy tail began wagging enthusiastically. Before heading outside, Naruko slipped into a dark alley and emerged a moment later, now wrapped in a worn, khaki-colored sheet that covered her body like a cloak. Itachi, the teen, observed her actions with curiosity but decided not to question it. When his own stomach grumbled, he simply shrugged and led the way toward Ichiraku ramen. As they walked through the village, Itachi took note of the cold stares directed at Naruko. His eyes sharpened slightly as he activated his Sharingan, making it clear that anyone with ill intentions would be wise to reconsider. Naruko, however, pulled her cloak tightly around herself, trying to shrink from sight. She glanced up at Itachi and noticed his crimson-colored eyes. Itachi caught her curious gaze and decided to explain, "This is my family's Kekkei Genkai, the Sharingan. It allows me to analyze and copy almost any technique I see, except for those that belong to other bloodlines or summon-based abilities. The Sharingan's strength is determined by the number of tomoe, those little comma-shaped marks. 1 tomoe means a beginner, 2 indicates experience, and 3 represents mastery. There's also a fourth stage called the Mangekyo Sharingan, where the 3 tomoe merge into a new pattern." He paused, his expression turning a bit more serious. "With the Mangekyo, I can use 2 powerful techniques, Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu that affects the mind deeply, and Amaterasu, black flames that burn anything in their path. But I don't want to awaken the Mangekyo because, well, it requires a painful sacrifice. And I don't believe in harming others, no matter who they are." Naruko's ears drooped slightly at his words, sensing the sadness behind them. Itachi, noticing this, quickly changed the topic. "There's another powerful dojutsu called the Byakugan. People with white eyes possess it, and it allows them to see almost everything around them, even through solid objects. They can also observe a person's chakra flow in incredible detail." Naruko listened intently, her blue eyes wide with fascination. Itachi chuckled at her childlike wonder. By the time they reached Ichiraku ramen, the warm aroma of broth and fresh noodles filled the air. The stand's owner, Tuchi Ichiraku, greeted them with a broad smile. Beside him, his 12-year-old daughter, Ayame, beamed just as brightly. Well, if it isn't my #1 customer, and Itachi. What can I get for you two?" Tucci asked cheerfully. Hello, Tucci-san, Itachi greeted politely. I'll have a pork ramen. Ayame turned to Naruko with a welcoming smile. And for you, Naruko-chan? Naruko hesitated for a moment, her expression dimming slightly. Ayame tilted her head in curiosity, sensing something was wrong. Itachi stepped in gently, explaining, there was an incident last night. Someone attacked her, and she suffered a severe throat injury. The damage to her vocal cords means she won't be able to speak for a long time. Tucci's friendly demeanor shifted to one of deep concern, his brows furrowing in frustration. This kind of nonsense has to stop. She's just a child. If I had the means, I'd adopt her myself. Itachi glanced at him thoughtfully. So? Why don't you? Tucci let out a sigh. I wish I could, but every time I go to the orphanage, they either triple or quadruple the cost of adoption paperwork. And whenever I approach the Hokage about it, a council member always interrupts, claiming there's a clerical error. They take all the documents, including my adoption papers, and shred them. If I try again, his secretary tells me he's too busy and even threatens to call the Anbu if I don't leave, Tucci explained. Ayame gently cradled Naruko, who nestled into her warmth, ears drooping slightly and eyes closed as she listened to Ayame's heartbeat. On top of that, people know she likes to eat here. If they see her, they either leave or avoid the stand altogether. I even lowered my prices so she could afford a meal. The best I can do is offer her a place to hide when she's being chased or let her sleep here if her apartment isn't safe. Itachi looked down at the small girl, now fast asleep in Ayame's arms, his eyes glistening with emotion. Tucci-san, if you can't adopt her. Maybe I can, he said. Ayame blinked in surprise. What do you mean? She asked. I'll talk to my parents and see if I can adopt her. I'm sure my little brother, Sasuke, and Naruko would be great friends. But for now, I think she could use a good meal, Itachi replied. Ayame gently woke Naruko while Tucci set down a steaming bowl of pork ramen for Itachi, along with 10 different varieties of ramen for Naruko. By the time Itachi finished his meal, he turned to find Naruko finishing her 10th bowl, making his eyes widen in astonishment. She let out a small yawn and rubbed her eyes sleepily as Itachi scooped her up. Just then, Kurenai and Anko stepped into the stand. Kurenai-san, Anko-san, what brings you here? I thought you'd be at the Dengo shop, Itachi said, adjusting Naruko's hood over her head to conceal her ears. The owner was feeling unwell, so they closed early. We decided to stop by instead, Anko explained. Besides, we heard the owner here is like a father figure to Naruko, and we wanted to thank him. Tucci smiled warmly. I'm honored, ladies. Kurenai's gaze fell on the small bundle in Itachi's arms. Who's that you're carrying? And why are you pulling up a hood? She asked, curiosity piqued. Before Itachi could respond, Naruko shifted slightly, rubbing her eyes again and knocking the hood down, revealing her fox-like ears. Kurenai and Anko gasped before their expressions softened. She's adorable. They squealed in unison, gently touching her ears. Naruko giggled at the sensation. Itachi sighed in relief. For a moment, I thought you were going to react differently. Why would we? Anko asked, tilting her head. She's just a child. And if these ears are a result of the seal, it's not her fault. They're just like her whisker marks, nothing to be concerned about. Itachi hesitated, wondering if he should mention Naruko's tale but decided against it. Well, it's getting late. Come on, Naruko, you need some rest, he said, gently pulling her hood back up. Anko turned to Tucci. Hey, old man, give me a shrimp ramen. I'd like a chicken ramen, Kurenai added. We'll follow Itachi for a bit, then come back to eat. The trio made their way to Naruko's apartment, only to find themselves standing in front of a rundown building. Inside, the living space was relatively clean, but the wallpaper was torn, and the walls bore marks from kunai. The kitchen sink was piled high with empty instant ramen cups, but at least the bedroom looked comfortable enough for Naruko to sleep. Itachi carefully placed her on the bed, tucking the covers around her. "Good night, Naruko," he whispered in a gentle, almost fatherly tone. Kurenai and Anko each placed a soft kiss on her forehead before quietly leaving the room. The next morning, Naruko woke up and glanced around, realizing she was back in her apartment. Her gaze fell on the floor, where a small stuffed red fox sat with a tag attached. "To Naruko? From a friend." Naruko tilted her head curiously. She dropped down onto all fours, her fluffy tail swishing behind her. She cautiously prodded the stuffed fox with a finger before dashing under the bed, peeking out to see if anything happened. When it didn't, she inched closer again, giving it another nudge before quickly retreating, sitting cross-legged as she eyed it warily. After a moment, her face lit up with joy. She crouched low, tail wagging, and pounced on the stuffed toy, giggling excitedly. A soft chuckle echoed from outside her window, but she was too caught up in playing to notice. Perched in a nearby tree, Kurenai and Anko watched through a pair of binoculars, ensuring Naruko was safe. "She has the cutest little tail," Anko gushed. "Itachi is so in trouble for not telling us." A quiet street. Itachi walked down the dimly lit street, suddenly sensing an eerie presence directed at him. A shiver ran down his spine. "Strange. I feel something ominous. But from whom?" he pondered. "Anko? No, that doesn't seem right. She can be intense, but once you get to know her, she's actually quite kind. A bit eccentric, but kind. Did she find out something I was keeping from her? But what could it be?" Dash. Up in the tree, hidden among the branches, a group of girls observed from above until Kurenai heard an excited squeal. "I just want to go down there and pet his little tail," Anko exclaimed with delight. Kurenai blinked in surprise. "Wow, Anko-chan. I don't think I've ever seen you act this excited before." Anko huffed playfully. "What? I have my moments. I'm still a girl, you know." She then tilted her head curiously. "I wonder who gave her that little fox plush?" "Probably someone who cares about her, just like we do," Kurenai replied with a warm smile. The girls continued watching as Naruko joyfully played with her toy. Dash. Naruko's apartment. Naruko tossed the stuffed fox into the air, catching it effortlessly before rubbing her cheek against its soft fur. A giggle escaped her lips as she wagged her tail in excitement. With a small leap, she pounced on the toy again, completely absorbed in her playful moment. Dash. Up in the tree again. Anko struggled against the chains holding her back, flailing dramatically. "Just one touch. Just one. Come on, Kurenai-chan, this isn't fair." Kurenai sighed but remained firm. "Sorry, Anko-chan, but I had to restrain you. No matter how much we want to, we can't just run down there." Anko narrowed her eyes. "Then how come you aren't tied up? You just want to touch that fluffy tail all by yourself, don't you?" Kurenai smirked and lifted her leg, revealing that she, too, was secured to the tree trunk with a brace and chain. "Actually, I tied myself up when I restrained you." Anko pouted dramatically. "You're no fun," she whined, pretending to cry exaggerated waterfall tears. Dash. 5 years later. An 8-year-old Naruko walked along the village streets, wrapped in a worn-out cloak, a dark blue face mask covering her face. Today, the atmosphere in the village was different. People were whispering among themselves, but it wasn't about her for once. "Did you hear? Itachi Uchiha. He killed his entire clan last night." "Yes, and I heard the only survivor was his younger brother, Sasuke. After the tragedy, Itachi just left the village." Naruko's ears perked up, her eyes widening in shock. "Itachi killed his clan? That can't be right." She knew firsthand that Itachi had wanted to adopt her. His father had always opposed the idea, labeling her as an outsider. Itachi had tried again and again, even with his mother pleading on her behalf, but nothing changed. Eventually, Itachi had stopped pushing for adoption, instead choosing to support Naruko in secret by giving her half of his earnings from every mission. That money had helped her survive. Without hesitation, Naruko sprinted toward the Hokage Tower, dashing past the startled secretary and the ninja who attempted to stop her. She burst through the office doors, quickly shutting them behind her and using her body as a barricade. "Naruko? What's the matter?" the Hokage asked, his voice calm yet concerned. Inside the office stood a boy around Naruko's age. He looked like a miniature version of Itachi, though with shorter hair and a slightly taller frame. Naruko flashed a small grin, only to be swiftly tackled to the ground by 4 Jonin, who held her down. "That's enough. Let her go," the Hokage commanded. "But, Hokage-sama," one of them started to protest. "I won't repeat myself," the Hokage said firmly, his voice carrying a weight of authority. "Do as I say, or you'll have to answer to Ibiki and Anko." The Jonin immediately stiffened, beads of sweat forming on their foreheads. They knew all too well how intimidating those two could be. Not wanting to take any chances, they quickly released Naruko and stepped back. Once things settled, the Hokage turned back to the boy standing nearby. "Now then, Naruko, I'll speak with you in a moment. First, I need to finish my conversation with this young man." Naruko reached into her cloak, pulling out a photograph and handing it to the Hokage. He took it with a puzzled expression, but as soon as he glanced at the image, his eyes widened in realization. His gaze shifted toward the boy. "Sasuke, are you absolutely certain that you saw Itachi harming your family?" the Hokage asked. Sasuke's hands clenched into fists. "Yes, sir. I saw everything through a genjutsu called Tsukuyomi. He showed it to me himself." The Hokage took a deep breath before shaking his head. "Then you've been misled. Your brother was framed for the crime." Sasuke's eyes widened in shock. "What? But how?" The Hokage turned to Naruko with a solemn expression. "Thank you, Naruko. You may have just saved an innocent man from a terrible fate." "Take a look at this photo," said the Hokage, handing Sasuke a picture. Sasuke examined it carefully, seeing Tsuchi Ichiraku grinning from ear to ear while embracing his daughter with one arm. Standing beside him was Itachi Uchiha, his smile just as bright, flashing a peace sign with his right hand. On his left, he carried an 8-year-old Naruko, who was also holding up a peace sign inside the ramen stand. At first, Sasuke was confused, but then his gaze fell on the date and time stamped in the bottom left corner. His eyes widened in shock. This photo was taken during the time when the Uchiha massacre had begun. He quickly realized that the ramen stand and the Uchiha complex were too far apart. Even if Itachi had used a shadow clone jutsu, the distance was still too great for him to have been in both places at once. "But how?" Sasuke asked in disbelief. The Hokage folded his hands and explained, "It's possible that someone had been observing your brother for a long time, studying his movements, analyzing his combat style, and waiting for the right moment to frame him. If this person understood his conflicts and grievances, they could have twisted those into a convincing illusion of guilt." As for the Tsukuyomi, there are theories that a similar effect can be achieved by channeling immense intent through the eyes, combining it with a high-level genjutsu. This would make the target believe they had witnessed something horrifying, such as their own demise or the loss of others. Additionally, the so-called Sharingan scene that night may not have been real. Someone could have created special contact lenses mimicking its appearance, as the transformation jutsu cannot replicate bloodline abilities. Sasuke was stunned. The realization that the person responsible had gone to such lengths to frame Itachi left him speechless. "Sasuke," the Hokage continued, pulling him from his thoughts. "Your brother was a good man. He protected Naruko countless times. In fact, he even considered adopting her, but your father's strong pride and ambition prevented him from accepting Itachi's wishes. Your brother never sought power for himself, he was always pushed by the expectations of your father and the Uchiha elders." "That's why I always heard him arguing with father and the others," Sasuke murmured. The Hokage nodded. I believe Itachi was with Naruko the entire time. He turned to Naruko, who gave a small nod, silently confirming his assumption. Sasuke turned back to Naruko and bowed slightly. Thank you, Naruko-san, for proving my brother's innocence. If not for you, I might have been consumed by anger and sought power just to avenge something that never happened. Naruko tugged at the Hokage's robes, gaining his attention, and pointed at her stomach, tracing the seal there. Are you sure about this, Naruko? The Hokage asked. She nodded firmly, determination shining in her eyes. Very well, the Hokage said before turning back to Sasuke, who looked on in confusion. Sasuke, how much do you know about the nine-tailed fox, the Kyuubi no Kitsune? The fourth Hokage defeated it, Sasuke answered. Not exactly, the Hokage corrected. The fourth Hokage couldn't destroy the beast, so he sealed it away instead. However, this required a host, someone whose chakra pathways hadn't fully developed yet. That host had to be a newborn child. He then looked at Naruko. And that child stands beside you now, Naruko Uzumaki. Sasuke's eyes widened as he turned to Naruko, who simply smiled as she pulled down her mask. But she's just a normal girl, he said. She is, the Hokage confirmed. But the villagers don't see it that way. They view her as the beast itself. Over the years, Naruko has endured many hardships, including numerous attempts on her life. One such incident, when she was 3, damaged her vocal cords. Fortunately, she has recovered enough to whisper and communicate with those close to her. She has also found acceptance among a few individuals, one of whom was your brother. Itachi once came to me and requested to act as Naruko's personal protector. He accepted only brief S-class and A-class missions, sending half of his earnings to support her. Just last night, he visited me, saying he wanted to introduce you too. He hoped you might become friends. The Hokage smiled at the memory. Naruko then lowered her hood, revealing fox-like ears atop her head and a long, silver fox tail swaying behind her cloak. It appears the sealing process had some unexpected effects, the Hokage mused. I assume Itachi was aware of this? Naruko nodded, her tail flicking slightly. The Hokage chuckled, amused by her small gesture, but Sasuke soon interrupted. Naruko-san, thank you for everything. Naruko simply smiled and extended her hand. Sasuke took it without hesitation, sealing their newfound understanding with a handshake. Naruko, there's something important I need to share with you. Sasuke is welcome to stay as well, the Hokage said as he turned toward a framed picture of the fourth Hokage hanging on the wall behind his desk. Gently moving it aside, he revealed a hidden safe. Unlocking it, he retrieved 4 scrolls, 3 in blue, yellow, and red, while the fourth was a simple green scroll, and placed them carefully on the table. Now, Naruko, this is something your parents entrusted to me. They left specific instructions for you to receive these scrolls on your 8th birthday rather than when you turned 16. Your father was Minato Namikaze, the yellow flash of the leaf and the fourth Hokage himself. As for your mother, she was Kushina Uzumaki, one of the village's most skilled medical specialists, trained under my student Tsunade Senju. She was known as the Leaf's Angel for her kindness. She treated everyone with compassion, whether they were allies, strangers, or even former enemies. She had the warmest heart, and her presence was truly angelic. Though she passed away shortly after your birth, she lived long enough to name you. Your father, too, gave his life to protect the village, sealing the nine-tailed fox within you. Naruko's eyes widened as the words sank in. Her hero, the fourth Hokage, was actually her father. And her mother, a woman known for her kindness and skill, had loved her deeply. Overcome with emotion, she dropped to her knees, tears of joy and sorrow streaming down her face. The green scroll explains your father's bloodline ability, the Ryugen, also known as the Dragon's Eye. Inside, you will also find photographs of your parents and their final words for you. These 3 scrolls contain your father's swords. He specifically requested that no one be assigned to train you in using them, but I trust his reasoning. The Hokage handed the green scroll to Naruko, who accepted it with trembling hands. With deep gratitude, she bowed respectfully, her heart full of emotion. "Naruko, Sasuke, I suggest you both head out now. You wouldn't want to be late for your first day at the Ninja Academy," the Hokage advised with a gentle smile. Both children bowed respectfully before leaving the office, making their way toward the academy. As the Hokage watched them go, he sighed softly. "If only you could see this, Itachi. Your wish for your brother and Naruko to be friends has come true," he murmured, gazing thoughtfully out the window. Later that night, as Naruko drifted into sleep, she found herself in a strange place, a dark, damp corridor that resembled a vast underground sewer. The only sound was the faint echo of someone crying. Feeling a sense of urgency, she followed the sound, her footsteps splashing softly against the shallow water beneath her feet. As she approached, she saw an enormous set of iron gates, held shut by a small slip of paper marked with the kanji for seal. Peering through the bars, she spotted a girl curled up and sobbing. "Excuse me, are you all right?" Naruko asked, surprised to hear her own voice echo clearly in this strange place. At the sound of her voice, the girl flinched but didn't turn around. Instead, she only sobbed harder, whispering between her tears, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is all my fault." Naruko frowned in concern. "What do you mean? What's your fault?" Slowly, the girl lifted her head and turned toward Naruko. As she stepped closer, the dim light revealed her features, a breathtakingly beautiful woman, appearing to be in her early 20s. She had pale, flawless skin, long red silk-like hair cascading down her back in a neat ponytail, and mesmerizing crimson eyes that seemed to glow softly. She wore a white kimono that enhanced her graceful presence without being revealing. But what stood out the most were the 2 red fox ears atop her head and the 9 elegant, blood-red fox tails with white tips swaying behind her. Naruko gazed at the woman in awe. The only word that escaped her lips was, "Beautiful." The woman blushed lightly at the unexpected compliment. Thank you," she murmured shyly. "Are you an angel?" Naruko asked, tilting her head curiously. The woman shook her head with a sad smile. "No. I am a demon. I am the 9-tailed fox, Kyubi no Kitsune." Naruko blinked, then shook her head. "That's impossible. You're far too beautiful to be the Kyubi." A sorrowful expression crossed the woman's face. "I'm not lying. I truly am the Kyubi," she whispered, lowering her gaze as fresh tears welled in her eyes. Naruko studied her for a moment before asking softly, "Then, why did you attack the village?" "I didn't mean to. There was this man with yellow snake-like eyes named Orochimaru who woke me up and tried to steal my powers. He put a genjutsu on me, but it backfired, causing me to enter a primal state as I thought I was protecting myself from the villagers," said Kira in a quiet, sorrowful voice. Naruko slipped through the bars and embraced Kira. Kira flinched at first but then slowly returned the embrace, thinking to herself, "She's not afraid of me. Does she trust me? I don't care what you call yourself, but to me, you're one of my first friends, and you've helped me through so much," said Naruko, recalling all the times when her wounds healed with the red chakra that had come from Kira's presence. Kira gazed at her with soft eyes. Naruko's cerulean blue eyes met Kira's crimson red ones, as if they were searching into each other's hearts. The distance between them closed as they shared a quiet, warm moment together, a silent understanding passing between them. "Kira-chan, do you remember your first toy?" Naruko asked gently. "Yes," Kira replied with a small smile. "I created that toy for you with my chakra, hoping to make your day a little brighter. You looked so adorable playing with it. It reminded me of a little fox playing with a toy." Naruko blushed at the memory. "I still have it. It was my first and favorite toy. Sometimes, I still play with it," she said, hugging Kira tighter. "Kira-chan, is there a way to release you, even for a little while?" Naruko asked, running her clawed fingers gently through Kira's fur, which caused Kira to purr in contentment. "There is a way," Kira replied, her voice soft and reassuring. "If you rip the seal outside the gate in half, It will allow me to take a physical form, while still keeping most of my powers within you. That sounds amazing. But will you be able to teach me how to use kitsune techniques once you're outside? Naruko asked, her eyes lighting up. Of course, Naruko-kun. And by the way, my name is Kira Yoko, Kira said, her voice filled with happiness as her tail wrapped around Naruko's. The two of them settled down, both feeling at peace within the comfort of each other's presence as they drifted off to sleep inside the cage. Dear YouTube family, that wraps up the first part. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more exciting content coming your way soon. Much love. Best regards. Anime Octopus.